Hello everyone, and welcome to this event which is conducted jointly by Zicklin Finance Club and MBA Club. I am Devin Sangvi, and along with me is my colleague Fabiana, who is a member of the MBA Club, and we both are the host of this event. So the Zicklin Finance Club is the only finance-based club at Baruch College, which helps students by conducting the events in all the areas of finance. And the MBA Club is a student organization which includes both part-time and full-time student, and it also includes the events in terms of like finance, technology, and management. And now I will like to call upon my co-host to proceed further.
Thank you, Devin, and welcome everyone. My name is Fabiana, and I'm the president of the MBA Club. I will pause for a second because I have 3 people in the waiting room. Okay, now I'm meeting everyone. Okay, awesome. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to our speaker. Her name is Mary. She's the director of M3 Partners, and she has more than 20 years in advisory experience. Mary focuses in and out of court restructuring, both in company side and also in the lender advisory side. She has advised underperformance and distressed companies across many industries. Mary also had developed a specialty in working with private equity sponsors and has advised distressed and healthy portfolios companies across various situations, including mergers and integrations. Mary has extensive experience advising corporations filing Chapter 11, including Sears, the iconic luxury retailer Burley's, and Herman Brothers Holding, which was the largest Chapter 11 history. Mary earned her bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Scranton. She's a CPA, certified insolvency and restructuring advisor, and certified turnaround professional. She's also an active member of several organizations, including the Turnaround Management Association in New York City, the International Women Insolvency and Restructuring Confederation, and the Association of Insolvency and Restructuring Advisors. Mary today will walk you through what is corporate restructuring. She will also give you an overview on the roles in restructuring and how can you choose the right company for you if this is the path that you're looking for. She will also share advice on how to be successful in this career. Without further ado, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Fabiana and Devin, for that warm introduction. Before we get started, I wanted to ask the audience here, or actually before I do turn to my first question, I just want to make note that the views of this presentation are the views of myself and not of my firm or the TMA organization, which I'll speak about a little bit later in the presentation. As we move on, I wanted to ask the audience, I do want to make this interactive, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask your question, or hopefully Fabiana or Devin, if you see anything in the chat that you want to ask, please feel free to ask as I go along. I do want you to get out of this presentation what you want to get out of it, and I want to be helpful. Before I move on, I just wanted to ask the audience, does anyone want to share what their view of corporate restructuring is, or how they think about corporate restructuring?
Downsizing.
Shinja just said downsizing.
Yeah, okay, great. That is downsizing. It's redesigning one or more aspects of the company, and downsizing is definitely one of them. Just onto that point, it's always easier to cut the cost of a company, and sometimes we call it cut the bleeding, than it is to grow a company. Some of the reasons or the contributors to a corporate restructuring might be due to disruptors, such as COVID, or the war that's going on in Ukraine right now. There's also cyclical or permanent changes. An example of a permanent change may be from cars going to more battery operated, and the effect that that will have on the various supply chains. Corporate restructurings can be either in court or out of court. If a company is going to go through a restructuring in court, it is very expensive. So making sure that the cash flow is there to take a company through an in-court restructuring is important. And then corporate restructuring can be either financial and or operational, or both. The overview, I wanted to lay out a chart of the potential roles or job opportunities in restructuring. And this is a simplified view. There are many. So at the top, you see the distressed bankrupt companies, and then the restructuring legal counsel is on the right. And then the debtor company advisory, that's mostly what I've been doing for the past 20 years of my career. And that is advising the company on the company side. Most of that is primarily done pre-COVID. It would be at the company. And it's on the debtor side, the importance of being at the company, at least I can speak for how I feel, is just when you're interacting with members of the management team in a stressful situation, if they are potentially going to file for bankruptcy, you're able to see the reaction. You're able to, you're going in there as an advisor. You want to help the company. Your job is to help the company restructure, if that is the case, and then move on to your next deal. But it's working with that management team and building a relationship with them, being able to see the stress in their face. It is good to be on site as much as you can on the company side. On the creditor advisory side, that is advising the group of creditors, whether it's the general unsecured creditors, sometimes the administrative creditors will have a group form as well. And on the creditor advisory side, you receive the information from usually from the debtor advisors. So the 13-week cash flow and other information that the debtors may be preparing. And you analyze that information. On the creditor advisory side, you'll analyze the information, and then you will have meetings with the debtor advisors, go through your questions. And if you think about it, you're trying to advise the creditors, and you have the best interest. You want the best for the creditors that you're advising. So it's questioning certain things that the debtors may be paying, and looking at analyzing the 13-week cash flow, and then preparing on the creditor advisory side. You'd prepare presentations for your constituents that you are reporting to and advising on the creditor side. The lender advisory side is you're advising, and I've done a couple lender side deals as well, advising the lenders in the capital stack. And again, similar, somewhat of a similar role in to the creditor advisory side, where you're getting the 13-week cash flow and other information from the debtor advisors, analyzing that and presenting it to the lenders that you are advising. There's also the claims noticing agent, and the claims noticing agent will notice, send out various notices throughout the bankruptcy, and also maintain what's called the docket, where all the information, the documents that are filed for the case are stored publicly. And then they also maintain the claims register for all the claims that are filed in the case. And that's public information. There's also restructuring lenders. This can be either traditional banks or non-traditional banks. And there are people on the non-traditional side who have a certain risk, appetite for risk, that are willing to work in some of these, lend to these distressed companies that a traditional bank may not be able to. And then there's also distressed debt investors who will invest in distressed companies. Towards the end of the case, just moving down to the bottom of the chart here, once the case goes, usually once the case goes what's called effective, the plan is confirmed, the case goes effective, a liquidating trustee will be appointed to wind down the remainder of the case. And then usually towards the end of the case, if there's assets that have not, that still could be monetized for the estate, but the estate wants to wind down, those assets will be sold to what's called a remnant assets purchaser, because the remnant assets purchaser could be around for a lot longer. That this is what they do, and they'll be around for a lot longer than the estate wants to be around for. How to choose a company. This is, I think, 5 things that came to mind here. How do you, starting out from all of your position in how to choose a company to work for in restructuring, I think understanding the type of work a company specializes in is important. You may see that, some company, the websites say they do everything, but really understanding what do they specialize in. By reading number 2, reading case studies and news articles of the roles that the company played in prior engagements. Number 3, just ask yourself after reading those case studies or articles, is this the type of work that you want to do? And could you see yourself doing this? Number 4, to the extent possible, talk to professionals who work at the firm, whether LinkedIn, I'm going to go into the TMA organization later on how to meet other professionals within the restructuring industry. Or you can just look on the website and find someone and see if they're willing to have a 15-minute call with you and learn about what they do and if it's something that you would be interested in. And lastly, I think everyone just learning the company culture and through talking to different professionals, reading what they do, and just learning to network within the restructuring industry will help you learn more about the company culture for the company that you are looking at. A couple things, I call this what I wish I knew. Restructuring is a really fast-paced job. Every engagement is different. No 2 engagements are the same. They may have the same underlying issues, but every engagement is really different, which leads me to number 3, the importance of what's called bottoms-up modeling. I can't stress this enough on always starting a new financial model for every case you work on, as opposed to, there's no really templates. You have best practice. As you work on more deals, you'll build a best practice of what's worked in the past. But always starting a new model, a new Excel file, because you never want to have a prior company information on a file and potentially be deposed or it go on to, get passed along and someone finds that. Number 4, what I wish I knew, and this is also probably goes to being successful on the job, is learning who's who in the zoo early on in the case. A couple slides prior when I was talking, about the debtor, creditor, lender, advisors, understanding who each of those parties are will help you throughout the case. And as you build your network as well, you may be, working on the opposite side of someone who or you've built a relationship with. Number 5, build your personal brand. If you do start a career in restructuring, just learn about what do you want to stand out for, and start to, work towards building that personal brand to develop yourself. How to be successful on the job. I think one thing that is important, number 1, learning the turnaround and restructuring lingo. If there's something that you can Google, definitions, if you're on a deal or in the office and you hear people talking, to the extent you can Google, definitions or the bankruptcy law, do that, and start to learn what it means. Number 2, familiarize yourself with the bankruptcy law. A lot of what we do on the financial side is you follow the bankruptcy law, the bankruptcy code, and it's really, really important to read it, understand it, when there's a motion and an order filed in a case. Be very careful on reading the language and be very, because there's 1 or 2 words or the way something could be said where, it could be misinterpreted, or, you might in your mind think, well, we did this on the last deal, but like I said earlier, every deal is different. So even if it was, objection period of, for example, 15 days on the last case, it might be 20 days on your current case. So things do change from case to case. Number 3, on being successful on the job, learn how to organize and present large quantities of data in a concise format that can be updated weekly, monthly, whatever is going to be your reporting package to the management team, the constituents, maybe to the court, is creating a template. Because a lot of times what we're given is large amounts of data, and it's understanding how to organize it and present it so that it's easy for management to understand. Sometimes you look at something and there's a lot of numbers on the page. The font is not easy to like read. And if you can create something that maybe, a cover sheet that summarizes everything, and then have, a couple supporting schedules, and then your detail behind it, it helps build the story to how you got to that cover page. And if you think about it, when you're talking to management, they may only have a few minutes. And if this is a weekly or daily, even a daily report, they just want to look at the key items. And if they want to dig down deeper, they'll have the support behind it. And this, I will tell you, number 3, it comes with time and practice. Number 4, I know I mentioned on number 1 to try to Google your answer or look it up online. But asking questions, if you don't understand something, just ask. Most people, there's so much, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't know everything. So it's asking questions, because if you don't ask a question, things are moving so fast on a case, and there's so much going on that people don't know. Everyone just assumes you know it if you don't ask. That's just the assumption. Number 5, building your network early in your career. This is really, I can't stress how important this is. There is potential talk, and as a restructuring professional, hopefully it'll happen, but in a way, of a potential recession coming up. For someone like yourselves, in the audience here, if you are looking to go into restructuring, what a better opportunity. And I'll talk about the TMA, like I said, a little later in this presentation, but the opportunity to get out there and network with restructuring professionals so that to the extent, even if they're not hiring today, you know, they may be hiring down the road if they get busy, or they may know someone, you know, if their shop's not hiring, they may be like, well, you know, XYZ shop is hiring, and be able to make the connection, you know, for you that way, or introduce you that way. So it is really important. The other thing I wanted to mention on building your network early in your career is, if you think about it, as you develop, as you move up the chain, if you're, and I'm from the financial end here, if you're networking with attorneys, if they start, you know, they're starting out as associates and they're moving up, well, as you're moving up, they're going to be moving up to partner level. And having that relationship while you're earlier on in your career makes it a lot easier. And if you think about it, you know, everyone's life seems to get busier if people get married, have kids, or they go different paths. You know, things just, you're not always out, you know, for cocktails or dinners like you tend to be. I know COVID is a little different, but earlier in your career. So if you can build that network earlier, it is really important. It is really important to have. Number 6, finding a mentor, either internal and or external, I think is really good. You know, internally, obviously, to help you move up within the company, to help you navigate your way through the company. And then externally, it's always good to have someone else, you know, to bounce ideas off of, to have, just to support you in other ways that, you know, even if you're on a deal and they may know someone, and, you know, if they're your mentor externally, they may know someone else who's working on the deal, and be able to help you. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about the TMA. There is this, it's called the Turnaround Management Association is the TMA. There's a New York City chapter. This is a trade group of about 9,000 members worldwide, attorneys, consultants, bankers, lenders, financial advisors, investors, and other professionals. There's over 700 members in the New York chapter. And of those 700 members, there's representation from over 60 turnaround and restructuring companies. And so just the membership for this organization is free for full-time students. And there's a weekly newsletter or, you know, email blast that goes out. And it lists all the sponsors on there. And just from someone sitting in your shoes, I look at that as, you know, wow, you have access to an organization where you can look at that weekly email and see the different types of companies. So you can start your research if you truly are interested in restructuring. And then this organization, you would have access to those members as well. And I'll go through a couple ways to have access to the members is for someone, again, early on in your restructuring career, there is what's called the Next Gen Committee. And they have, there's networking, there's educational opportunities that are specifically tailored to folks like you who are at the early stage of your restructuring career. And there's different events, conferences, and also e-learning that you could, I was mentioning, you know, Googling earlier, but there is a magazine and there's also other online resources that are available to TMA members as well that highlight the, usually the, like, it'll cover a wide range of topics, but also, you know, the most current issues that restructuring professionals are facing. There's also the network of the TMA Now, which is the network of women that really focuses on trying to build opportunities and promote women within the restructuring industry. a couple, I wanted to mention, I'm actually moderating the webinar, and there are webinars, in-person networking events and podcasts. There is a webinar on May 18th, and I did want to mention it. It also goes into further building on the panel I'm doing today with 7 other panelists on May 18th to talk further about turnaround and restructuring, the available career paths. And then we will break out into a Q&A session after that, where you can talk to each of, and these are, the panelists have 20, 30 years of experience, and they range from the financial side to the attorney side. And it's really, I attended it last year. It was a great event. So I do hope that you would take the time to look at that and think about coming. And it is online as well. The in-person networking events, we're really trying to build the TMA to be a fun, valuable organization. And you know, June 1st, for example, there's a blackjack masterclass event, and that is in person. But just trying to tailor it, the events towards things that people, you know, that will be of interest and things that hopefully will be fun. On the podcasts, there's different podcasts. Professor Altman just spoke on one. Prior to that, there was, and I mentioned a little bit earlier, where the TMA has topics or information, educational information on relevant issues. It was called Pay for Performance, trade-offs in paying executive bonuses pre and post petition has really been a hot topic. And there's a podcast on that to with some restructuring professionals speaking about that. And here I just wanted to share the link with you. If you search Turnaround Management Association NYC Chapter, you can see that the student membership is free. And I do welcome you to join. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it more. Are there any questions from, I know I went through that. I hope it wasn't too quick or too much, but I wanted to see if there's any questions that I can answer.
Mary, thank you so much for sharing all this information. We do have 2 questions in the chat. The first one is from Jose, and the second is from Jonathan. And Jonathan, if you like to unmute yourself, just letting me know via the chat so you can ask your question yourself. But Jose, he doesn't have a mic, so I will be asking his question for him. So let me go down to it. So a little bit of background from Jose. He's interested in a career in restructuring, and his past experience is advising small businesses and how to become more successful, either obtaining more business or becoming MO advising. I'm not 100% sure if the sentence is complete, but it seems like he has some experience advising companies. So his question to you, Mary, is that is there opportunities for companies looking to employ, for example, recent MBA graduates who previous experience has nothing to do with restructuring, for example, government? So I think his question is around if there's opportunity to cross training, and even though he doesn't have the experience, maybe get the experience while working in restructuring.
Sure. So there are opportunities. It's really, and this is where I go back to the networking, is and Fabian, I think you mentioned government.
Yes.
Okay. So there are, and that's why also even on, reading case studies and learning about, or just going to the company websites and learning what the companies specialize in, there are certain larger companies that will break out into, retail. I want to say some do have actually government, there's this government, I've worked on a couple of government related deals, and there is like government contracting. There are specific rules, laws around government related and even government restructuring. And I know the contract specifically, when I worked on one of the cases I worked on, that was a specific issue, just understanding the nuances of that, because not everyone does. So there are opportunities. It's really just finding the right shop that does do that type of work. As far as Fabiana, if you don't mind me just touching on, I think you also mentioned he's worked with smaller companies. If I was I correct
Yes.
by that? So just on that point, and I am glad you pointed that out. There are what's called there are lower companies, restructuring firms that deal with lower middle market, and then large cap firms. There have not been, I'm currently still working on this year's restructuring. There haven't been that many large cap restructurings lately. But there are, if you want to stay focused on lower, like the lower middle market, there are companies who just specialize in that. And then there's companies that specialize in middle market. And then there's companies like my firm who, it depends really what the call is. We will focus on, we have Sears. We're a boutique shop, but we have worked on Sears, and we've worked on middle market companies as well. So hopefully that answers the question, Fabiana.
I think you hit everything in the question. Jose, if you have any follow-up question, just please post it on the chat. He doesn't have a mic, and that's why. Okay, so the next question will come from Jonathan. Are you ready to ask your question?
He on mute, but we cannot hear him, I guess.
Okay. Alrighty, so I have the question. Let me go there. Okay, so Jonathan's question is, how would you recommend professionals interested in restructuring obtaining practical experience in order to understand if restructuring would be a good fit as their career?
That's a good question. I would suggest, to the extent, Jonathan, you could do an internship. There are firms, and it's usually firms that do internships. I don't know what stage you're at, but to the extent you could do an internship with a couple, at least one, if not more, restructuring shops to learn if this is the type of work for you. The other way I really think is just trying to talk to different, it wouldn't be live experience, but you'd be talking to different, to the extent you can network with different restructuring professionals. And, whether it's a 15-minute phone call and just talk to them. I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn usually, or through a referral of someone, and can I talk to you for 15 minutes? And I walk them through the type of work I've done, mostly on the company side, and to help them, to give them an understanding of what the type of work is like. But I would say the best experience, to the extent you can get, an internship, live experience. The other thing, although it's not, and I also don't know, Jonathan, where you do currently work, but to the extent you are at a larger shop, there are different, some of the big four accounting firms right now, they have different business lines. And then some of the other larger restructuring shops have, different business lines. If you are in a different, I don't know if you're in, I'm just making things up, but if you're in audit or corporate finance or something outside of restructuring. To the extent you can ask if you could work on a restructuring deal. If things did get busy, that's another avenue a little bit harder, I think, but that's another avenue to think about as well, if that's helpful.
Okay, fantastic. I see you, Jonathan. I'm just not sure if you can unmute, but we have one more question from James. James, you ready to ask your question?
Hi, Mary. James Dowd. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Very informative. So I'm just I'm getting I'm finishing up my MBA program. Did try to get some restructuring internships, just wasn't as successful. So I'm currently going to be doing a public accounting audit. Just want to see how well those skills kind of prepare you for potential transition to corporate restructuring. Just like, is anything that I should particular about audit? I know I looked at your background that you had some audit experience, and it seems like there's a lot of CPAs kind of floating around in the industry, just kind of seeing, what kind of skills maybe we should focus on if I'm really interested in maybe making that transition down the line. Thank you.
It's a good question, and it's kind of hits close to home because you are right. I did start out in audit, and that's how I actually transitioned into restructuring. Just a side note, James, I started at a firm, and 2 weeks into my time in the audit group, they asked me to go to Connecticut for 6 weeks, which was my first restructuring deal, Warnaco back in 2001. And that's how I ended up transitioning into restructuring. So I fell into it. I will tell you, I just through networking and my, group that I know, a lot of people just somehow fall into it. As far as the skills, you don't need a CPA to be in restructuring, but I will tell you it is helpful, especially on the financial side, understanding the which you can imagine doing in audit. If I can remember back to my days of audit, is when I talked about bottoms up modeling on a prior slide, I think of it as an auditor. One of the things that I think makes me successful is, as an auditor, you're looking at, you're auditing the books and records of the company. But you're in the details, you're understanding what's going on. And when I was, building my bottoms up models, I'll call it, or the other comment I had made on the taking large quantities of data and making it, a concise presentation or package for management. But it's really, if you think about it on the audit side, you're looking at the invoices, maybe, auditing the invoices, if you will. And I'm just kind of hypothetical picture here, but those all build into your financial statement package. And it's really making sure that the support of that, when you're doing an audit, that the support, or that your financial statements have the supporting information behind it. So I think from the perspective, and hopefully it makes sense, but from that perspective, just the way I think about building up a bottoms up model, if someone's going to come poke holes in it, am I able to support that number? So I would just look at it from your perspective. If you're doing audits, if, I don't know, sales are $1 million, or probably PP&E, if they're doing some kind of construction, does it make sense what's being capitalized? Being capitalized. Do the numbers make sense? So I think just being able to support the financials from an audit side will help you just understanding how to build your bottoms up models when people start poking holes in or trying to poke holes in your numbers, that you're able to support them. From the CPA perspective, just different companies I've worked on, having that, it's not necessary on restructuring, but just having that background, over the years has really helped me get staffed on deals as well. Because sometimes a client is looking for a CPA to work with on, on the deal. Or maybe whoever's hiring you wants to have a CPA in there. So I do think that's helpful, not necessary. And then again, James, I don't know, and that's fine. I don't need you to tell me where you are, but to the extent you are able to either network within your company or continue to network, like I said, I mentioned the TMA, but to the extent you are able to, if you join that and networked with professionals or found other restructuring professionals to network with, if things do start to get busy, as we are starting to read in the, and we'll see what happens. But if things do start to get busy and you build your network and people know you're interested and your background, that may be another avenue that you can take as well. Does that answer your question, or is that helpful?
Yeah, very, very helpful. Great advice. Thanks so much, Mary. Thank you. Great question.
Okay, fantastic. We have about 15 more minutes with Mary, and I see 2 hands raised, and we have a question in the chat. So Diomedes, I'm sorry if I...
Yes,
Diomedes? Okay,
yes.
You're next.
Thank you, Fabiana and Devin for putting this event together. And thank you, Mary, for joining us. So my question, it's, I'll try to make it short, but it's a couple of questions. I'll try to build it up together. So
if it's, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yes.
If it's easier to ask them one at a time, because that's how I'm going to answer them probably. So it's up to you. If you want to do one at a time, that's fine.
Yes, yes. So, and they're all related. So how closely related is restructuring with M&A and private equity? That's my first question.
So as far as on the private equity side, there are private equity firms, private equity companies that invest in obviously invest in companies. So if those companies, and there are certain private equity firms who focus on investing in distressed companies, and that's their portfolio is what distressed companies.
Mm-hmm.
So from how closely related are they? If you're looking at a private equity shop that focuses on investing in distressed companies, they're very closely related. And there are private equity shops that some of them that only focus in on distressed companies. As far as M&A, I guess if you're thinking along the lines of like a distressed company looking to sell either the whole company or an arm of the company, is that what we're
no, I think you kind of answered my question.
Okay.
Because kind of like PE, from what you say, is they would buy a company in distress, restructure it to maybe resell it later.
So some of them, there's 2 avenues. That's a really good point you just made, or just asked. Some of them, exactly what you just described, where they will invest in a distressed company and try to figure out how to make things better, if you will, and then sell it down the road. Correct. The other side of the private equity, I'm saying there's private equity companies that only let's just take a private equity company that invests in healthy companies. There have been, and there are private equity firms that invest in a company and the company goes into distress. And so in that case, they do hire restructuring advisors to try to work it, hopefully they try either out of court or in court. So there are healthy or private equity firms that invest in healthy companies that do end up.
Yeah, I think I lost the last second of it, but more importantly, what I wanted to ask you also, Mary, was somebody who is already working in restructuring, how easy would it be to transition into private equity?
If you are working in restructuring and transition to private equity, it's real. I would say, again, I go back to networking, but if you were working in restructuring and you restructure, a couple different avenues. If you restructured, if you were hired as the restructuring advisor to help work through a company that the private equity firm owned, there's one avenue there to network that way. I think it comes on, networking, figuring out what that private equity, company or firm is looking for. And if there's a good fit. I don't know that it's that easy to do, but I think if you have the right relationships and make the right connections, it could be possible, if that's helpful.
Yes, it is actually. Thank you so much.
Okay, Dan, it's your turn.
Then you can go next.
All right, thanks, Mary. I was hoping to have you elaborate a little bit on the flow chart that you built on, I think that was like slide 2 or 3. Basically just trying to get an idea of which, I guess I'll call them, which positions on the team use which types of people. I mean, obviously restructuring counsel is all lawyers, but just kind of in what I understand about this side of the business, it's a lot of accountants, a lot of lawyers, but you also mentioned there was a lot of opportunity for more consulting types. And I guess, selfishly, I kind of wanted to figure out where those types of people would be and just a general overview of the different positions here and which types of people that are which types of these companies are looking for which types of people.
Sure. So just restructuring counsel, yeah, that would be the attorney side. On the debtor company advisory side, that is, you're working with the with the company. So as far as that goes, if you were to look at some of the larger restructuring shops, some of them have specific retail, automotive, industry specific groups within their restructuring practice. As far as the type of skill set, it really ranges from, again, I'll just kind of speak my experience first. On the CPA side, I tend to work more with the financials, the CFO on the financial side of the company. If you are working on a distressed company that needs help in supply chain management and you have that skill set, and this is where I go back to, I'll hold off there, that comment for a minute, but if you have supply chain management or if you have a specific skill set that you are really specialize in, and a distressed company comes in and needs that advice, your expertise, that's the type of, and the larger shops have, and I don't mean to, I'm not saying larger is better than the lower market, lower middle market or middle market, but that's right. I think I go back to looking at the company websites and understanding what they specialize in. Do they focus more on companies that have supply chain management issues? What is their really bread and butter? And then on the debtor company advisory side as well, if you are at a company that is work for a firm that does a lot of bankruptcy work in court as opposed to out of court, there is just filing the first day motions, getting what's called the SOFAs and SOLs prepared, A lot of that is gathering information from the management team, preparing the documents. And there are some companies some firms have like the claims reconciliation process. I know I mentioned the claims and noticing agent, they just track the claims that are filed, but there are some debtor companies, advisory side firms that have a claims management team where they just reconcile the claims that are filed with the company. On the creditor advisory side, and the lender advisory side, you are more analyzing the information that the debtor advisors prepare, and then preparing presentations to the constituents that you're representing. But you're also advocating for whether it's the creditor group or the lender group for their best interests. So it's really understanding the decisions that the company's making. Were there any other, am I kind of going in the right direction, Dan, to answer your question, or?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you are. I guess I was just kind of trying to figure out like high level, like which, if I go to look at a company and I kind of figure out that they're, typically doing on the creditor advisory side. It makes sense that like every company would be different, but I was just curious if like typically you see certain types of teams that are more heavy on like the consultant or the accounting or the legal team or whichever other teams. That was kind of the gist of what I was, just high level on that.
So on back to the consulting point, if you think about, I focus on the debtor company advisory side, but trying to fix the company and reorganize it, I would say that would really be where you're on site and you're able to make, albeit you report to someone, but you're able to make changes and decisions, versus on the creditor advisory side and the lender advisory side, you're just advising the creditors. So you're not a consultant to the company directly, like fixing the issues with the company, whether it's their AR, AP issues, supply chain management, or various issues like that. Is that helpful?
Yes, because that's kind of ultimately what I would like to chase, is something that's kind of a fixer. So it seems like debtor company advisory is sort of the way to go.
I would think so, yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for all your questions. When Devin and I, we were talking about this event, we were looking forward to have that interactive event with time for your questions, so you all made it happen. So Mary, we have 3 more questions and 4 more minutes. So let's make it happen. So this question is from Jose, and he has 3 questions. So I will go one by one. So one, what are the future goals of your film?
The future goals of our firm?
Yes.
I guess just get more business, become more known within the industry. We got Sears, we were working on Sears prior to the bankruptcy, and then worked on that case. The restructuring advisors, the chief restructuring officer, our founder was the chief restructuring officer of Sears. So that I think put us on the map. But we're always looking, for the next deal, and how to distinguish ourselves within the industry. Our founder yesterday and spoke on a panel with 3 judges for the TMA. So different things like that to try to differentiate ourselves. It was a great panel, and very very interesting just to learn about the different issues that are going on currently, and just always out there. And to the we are looking to grow a private equity performance improvement side of the business as well, and a litigation advisor, a litigation. I'm drawing a blank on the name, the terminology. but a litigation testimony practice as well. So building different lines of business, as well as just staying true to our, corporate culture, and our values.
Okay, excellent. You already answered one of the questions. So it was about if the firm it was looking to expand your team. So you just mentioned there's new practices. So Jose, yes, they're looking to expand their team. And the last question is there any particular areas that the firm is focusing on?
You mean my firm in particular?
Yeah, your firm.
We, not in particular, I mean, restructuring. So we do company side, lender side advisory. We have worked on creditor side advisory deals as well. So nothing, I would say nothing in particular outside of what I just mentioned previously. And then the performance improvement, building that, and the litigation testimony as well, but nothing else in particular.
Okay. Awesome. We made it.
Okay.
So thank you, Mary, and thank you everyone for joining this event. This is the last event of the MBA Club for the semester. I just share with all of you the link where you can sign up to the newsletter. If you're interested in the future events, there will be new roles as well with the summer and next semester. And Devin just share a link to the Finance Club. So Mary, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a great week.
Thank you very much. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining.